The main event of the evening, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, former 170-pound title challenger, is a minus 445 favorite against the former UFC lightweight and WEC lightweight champion.
The disrespect.
And Anthony Showtime Pettis, who is a plus 355 underdog going into this
I think
fight.
that's crazy. That's wild.
Please hold for my comments.
They are really doing my boy Pettis bogus, and they have a lot of faith in Stephen Thompson. But go ahead.
For somebody who is known as one of the best as far as strikers go in the UFC, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who is a very good striker, got to give him that. He got to his title fight on those striking skills. If you had to guess without looking at it, when do you think was the last time Stephen Wonderboy Thompson finished a fight?
Never.
2015.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
February 2016 was the last time he finished a fight against
wow.
Johnny Hendricks.
Oh, that's not even a good one. That Johnny Hendricks, 2016 Johnny Hendricks isn't a good Johnny Hendricks, is it?
No,
That
definitely.
was him on his downfall and Thompson on his rise.
The last good one was GSP. So after GSP fight,
Robbie Lawler.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good call.
He beat Robbie.
So, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson obviously going to be the bigger and longer fighter in this fight. He's a very elite striker, very elite kicker, very elite kickboxer. So it's going to be a question of whether or not he can keep Anthony Pettis at distance. I don't think we've really seen... I think the most comparable fighter to Anthony Pettis that Wonderboy has fought would be Matt Brown. But Matt Brown is more of a hands-up type of guy than Anthony Pettis, and he's also longer. So it's not a great comparison. But Wonderboy Thompson did lose that fight. Granted, it was a long time ago. Anthony Pettis, the question is, you never know which Anthony Pettis you're going to get. If you get the best version of Anthony Pettis, I think he's one of the best in the world. But if you get the not as good version of Anthony Pettis, he's a very tentative guy who doesn't use the weapons that he does have, which he has a lot of weapons. He's a very good creative striker. He's a very good kickboxer. He's very good on the ground. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Anthony Pettis has some of the best skills among some of the best people in MMA. It's just whether it's the version of Anthony Pettis that shows up and uses those skills. I'm going to pick Anthony Pettis in this one. I think he has more weapons, despite him going in at a disadvantage because he's going to be the smaller and the lighter fighter in this fight. And the first time he's ever moved up to 170. So he's putting himself at a disadvantage going against somebody like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. But I think he's a better overall fighter. And I think Anthony Pettis, despite being a very, very large underdog, which I don't think is correct, as Brendan was saying, but I'm picking Anthony Pettis in this one.
Bougie just fucking inspired me. Good motivational fucking speech.
That was a great breakdown. If I can pat myself on the back right here.
I can break down the fight much better in my head than I can speaking because I'm not a good speaker.
Can't articulate your thoughts well.
Yeah, my mind moves a lot faster than my mouth does, so I stutter on the podcast a lot and all that stuff. But I promise you I'm much smarter than what my words tell. But how I view the fight. All right. From like what Bougie was saying, it depends what Pettis shows up. I think Pettis, the last, I would say probably 2 fights, maybe not the most accurate, maybe 2 to 3 fights, he's much more confident than what he used to be. Confidence is the biggest thing for Pettis. If he's not confident, he loses the fucking fight. It's clear cut and simple. But if he's confident, he's a scary motherfucker. I think he was really confident. His confidence was at an all-time high since his loss of the title to RDA against, who did he fight last? Ferguson. And he almost knocked Ferguson out, who is like number one contender for the best division in the game. So in saying that, when he's confident, which I believe he'll go into this fight confident, he can do damage. He can do the same thing that he did to Tony Ferguson, and Tony Ferguson is a much better fighter than Stephen Thompson will be or is. So in saying that, if he goes in with the same confidence and he actually attacks and he's the aggressor of the fight, he will win. I am picking Anthony Pettis. I can say so much more, but I'll just too busy thinking about it and I'll stutter. So this one I'm gonna give right now. If Bryce says something, I'll interrupt.
Before Bryce goes, this is a mandatory question to ask whenever we're picking Anthony Pettis fight. Is that your actual pick, or are you convincing yourself that Anthony Pettis is gonna win?
Before the podcast, I thought I was gonna pick Pettis no matter what because I knew you were picking Pettis, and for a pick standpoint, and I knew you were picking Pettis. Like I said, I'm gonna pick Pettis to have the same picks as you, so I don't get fucked up in picks. I don't want to pick, and I also don't want to pick against somebody that I want to win because, let's say he loses, that you know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't want to put yourself behind in picks.
Yeah, and you don't ever want to bet against somebody that you're rooting for because if he wins and the win loss, it's kind of fucked up. And I do before I thought Stephen Thompson was going to win, but you just convinced me. So I think he's going to win, and I'm choosing him to win. I could say so much more. I wish I could say it, but I'm going to interrupt Bryce if he gives me a good point.
One thing I don't like about being last in picks is that I can't give the full analysis that I had planned because a lot of it's been given.
Just say what you're going to say. Fuck them. No, the people listening to this show are fucking idiots anyway. Who gives a fuck?
Oh my goodness!
I'm just kidding. But just say what you're gonna. Just say what you're gonna say. Who gives a fuck?
Okay, so I'm gonna go take it all the way back to 2014.
All right. Would you mind if I interrupt you? Make this conversation kind of long because I feel like there's gonna be disagreements and agreements.
Do you want me to say who I'm picking first, or do you want me to
do your timeline? Because I feel like this is gonna be fun.
Okay, this is so.
It's going to take you way back to 2014.
Yeah, way back 2014. December 6th. Gilbert Melendez. He was losing that fight. He didn't look great. I think we can agree that, especially looking back on it. Gilbert Melendez was probably the better fighder there.
I will say that was the beginning of the end.
Yes, for sure. But he got a guillotine choke, alluding to that. And I'm sure that he was on his back at that point. Alluding to his black belt in jiu-jitsu just being top-notch.
Which is very scary from the fact that he was losing a fight to a lesser fighter, but it's also positive because it shows how well he is from his back. But continue on.
Yes, 100%. And that's going to be a point that gets made a couple more times here. Then the downfall happens. Rafael dos Anjos beats the brakes off of him for 5 rounds.
Okay, Bryce didn't acknowledge
pressures him.
Bryce didn't acknowledge it, so now I have to say it so the listeners don't think I'm weird. We were back in December 2014, so I was playing the top hit of December 2014 to set the mood. So, my joke fell flat. So now this is me admitting my fault.
It did, because now we're in March 2015. So, get it together. So Rafael dos Anjos fight happens. He gets the brakes beaten off of him. Can't handle the pressure for 5 rounds. Agreed? Just bad performance. Bad.
It was awful.
I wouldn't say he got the brakes beaten off him. I think.
He was nowhere near.
He was neutralized, completely neutralized. He wasn't in the fight at all. Completely neutralized. I don't think he was dismantled though.
Yeah, that's fair.
And he was gassed.
It was a game plan as to how you could beat Anthony Pettis.
Yes. It was as bad as he could look without getting his ass whooped, basically.
Yeah, but he took a lot of damage too, though.
Sure.
Eddie Alvarez, January 2016, wall install. But he still put him up against the fence. It wasn't super pretty, but another decision loss.
Eddie won the fight. I will say that. But you should no longer be out. It's not even. Isn't it a rule you can't wall install anymore?
Correct.
But it's like the rule is not even a big.
You don't get rewarded for wall install anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of bullshit that
the new rules unified, which half the commissions don't.
Even though Alvarez clearly won the fight, I think it's bullshit that he won the fight because he didn't do shit.
He wasn't fighting.
Yeah.
He stopped Anthony Pettis he effectively stopped Anthony Pettis from fighting.
Yes.
Which, it was a great game plan. It worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying as well.
It was very boring. It's like a Tyron Maya situation. Did what he had to do, but from a fan standpoint, it's really annoying. But continue on.
Yes, 100%. Then in April of 2016, Edson Barboza. I don't actually remember a whole lot from this fight. It says it's a decision loss. But he lost another fight at 155 after losing 3 straight. Do you remember anything from the fight, Brendan?
I do not remember anything from the fight, but I do definitely remember the lead up. He's coming off 2 losses in a row, and he was a former champion. When you're a fan of a champion that was a champion or is soon to become a champion or anything near that situation, you have high expectations. You want him to be champion. So leading up to this fight, I definitely remember he's gonna get the striker fighter. The dude's definitely going to throw kicks. I don't think he's going to do the lay and pray or whatever you want to call it on him. I feel like this is the fight that brings him back. I was highly confident in this fight. It's striker versus striker. This is his matchup. And then it's just another loss. And it's like the fight that he's supposed to win, he loses, and he loses again. So it was very frustrating. I don't remember the fight itself, though.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It definitely was frustrating because Edson Barboza, while I assume his jiu-jitsu is formidable, because you don't get to fight guys like Anthony Pettis unless you have a somewhat well-rounded game, but it should have been a guy that he could have taken down and potentially submitted.
Yeah, that probably should have been the correct game plan.
Yeah. And so with that, he decided, you know what? I'm going to move down to featherweight. I'm going to win that belt. Goes in August of 2016. He beats Charles do Bronx Oliveira and absolutely manhandles him. There really wasn't much of a problem because he out-grappled Charles Oliveira, and that's what he does.
Yep.
In the third round guillotine. He could do whatever he wanted in that fight on the ground. I don't remember there being any real moments on the feet, but it was very impressive.
He completely outclassed Charles Oliveira, yes. Do Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
Not Alex.
Any comments, Brendan, before I move on?
I agree.
Okay. Fourth fight of 2016. Didn't realize he fought 4 times in 2016.
Yeah, that's wild.
He fights Max Holloway.
Oof. Didn't go good.
It did not go good at all. He missed his weight, so Max is the only one who can fight for the then interim belt. And obviously we know how it went.
I don't even remember them fighting. Did Max just fuck them up?
Yeah. TKO, right?
Yeah. It says lost due to punches, so probably TKO in the third round. So my guess is it goes the same way that it goes for a lot of Max Holloway fights. He just breaks you down.
To be 100% fair, that was Anthony Pettis, who couldn't even make the weight at 145, so he obviously was not at peak performance going into that fight.
Damn, I didn't know he got TKO'd by Max. That's sad. I'll keep going.
Yeah. And so realizes that's no longer his division, can't make the weight, goes back up to 155, fights Jim Miller, wins by unanimous decision. I didn't think he looked very good in that fight. I don't remember a whole lot from it, and that says a lot to me.
Jim's a brawler, so it can be a tough matchup for sure, no doubt. But he's not a great fighter.
That was a decision win, correct?
Yes.
He's not a great fighter. That should be a fight where former Anthony Pettis finishes him, but the new Anthony Pettis is showing his new ways, and he barely wins, which is very...
And to be fair, again, I do remember the fight. Pettis went in there. He completely outclassed Jim Miller. Like, there was never a moment where Pettis was in trouble. He did to Jim Miller what Rafael Dos Anjos did to Anthony Pettis. But Pettis looked better offensively, I guess. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, but it lacked the danger, the killer instinct that we'd seen in the past. Moving to November of 2017. Dustin Poirier. It was a really good fight, but he gave up.
He did break a rib.
He gave up on... I mean, regardless, he still gave up.
It was wild things. It was wild because when it happened, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. He tapped out.
It literally looked like he tapped for no reason at the time.
And mind you,
I mean, he gets up, you see something poking in his belly, but
breaking a rib's a motherfucker.
I'm sure.
I broke a finger. That shit fucking hurts. I can imagine a fucking rib. Jamming your finger by a basketball hurts. So I'm nowhere near gonna judge the pain, but it was upsetting that he tapped out. And shout out
I also think he was losing that fight.
He was very much in it, though. Very, 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 very much.
He was very much in it since he lost the belt.
You think that Poirier was no doubt winning the fight? I might not remember as well, but I definitely thought that it could have been even at that point.
And I don't know when this happened. Duke Roufus called the fight for Anthony Pettis, but I'm gonna go off of right now before I forget. Duke Roufus is awesome. Love Duke Roufus. He'll do anything for Pettis. He will do what's best for Pettis.
I agree with what Brendan's about to say.
You don't really ever see that anymore, which I love. And again, I said this probably a couple years ago, maybe a year ago. I think Pettis needs to get away from
Rufus Sport.
He needs to expand his horizons. I think he should go to Winklejohn and whatnot with John Jones. John Jones with Winklejohn.
I think that's not the move. I think that camp is just not good.
Yeah,
but I do like what you're saying.
Whether it's Winklejohn or not, Anthony needs to expand his horizons.
I don't think he should spend the whole camp anywhere. I think he should go. He should
go to AKA.
Yes.
I think he should.
Sound like what we do in that sport.
I think he should get. You're cutting out, so I don't know if you're talking or not.
Go ahead, bro.
But I think he needs to get splashes of whatever from everywhere. If he wants, you got to go to the best wrestling. If you want to wrestle, go to the best wrestling place that you can, and whatever for every aspect of the game.
And he has a connection with Woodley. Go down to ATT for a while. Work out with Dean Thomas. ATT is breeding champions right now. I mean, he's working with good people at Rufus Sport too. Ben Askren's there. Duke Roufus is obviously the one who got him to where he is. But it's never going to hurt to expand your horizons, especially when you're not at your best, like Anthony Pettis has been since you lost the belt, basically. Expand your horizons, build on your game. It's only going to make you a better fighter.
100%. Like I said, go around, work out at ATT, AKA, and then come back and do your camps at Rufus Sport. Because I think that Duke Rufus is still a good coach, and he's the right guy to corner Anthony Pettis.
For sure.
So I just want to touch that aspect of Pettis. Now continue on with the timeline.
Yeah. All right. So then I thought he was losing the fight. I think I had it 1-1 going into the third, but Dustin Poirier was winning that third round up until that injury. That's how I had it in my head at that point. It was in it, and it was good performance.
It's another thing. It's another fight. Well, this is the fight he wins. Every fight that he loses, as a fan for me. I don't know about you. You probably had him losing, but I know Buju probably picked Pettis as well. Every fight that Pettis has, even after a loss, like this is the fight where he comes back. This is the fight where he comes back.
Which
he
fight
continues to lose.
Which fight was
Poirier?
This? Okay.
So as a fan, I can't even express my frustration that I was feeling after the fight and probably during the fight when he started losing in the third round. When it's clutch time, it's time to clutch up and perform. But continue on.
Mm-hmm. So now we're moving into 2018. Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa misses weight, and he's up. I never realized how big Michael Chiesa was. That's a big boy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how he made 155 up until that point. Obviously, Anthony Pettis ends up winning by triangle armbar. He came from I think he got beat up pretty decently in that first round. Came back from a lot of adversity, dropped Chiesa, but instead of going for the finish, via punches like we were hoping, he goes in and sinks in that triangle armbar. So,
which I don't even
performance.
I honestly don't care how he finishes him. If you want to go for the submission or if you want to knock him out, long as you finish him. But it's frustrating when you can knock him out by punches and then you go for the submission and it doesn't work out. That's what's frustrating. If you're going for the submission, you better get the motherfucker.
That's what I was going to say is that turned out to be the right move in the Chiesa fight where he might have been able to put him away with strikes, with ground and pound, whatever. But he goes for the submission, sinks it in, gets the finish. Now, in the next fight that we're about to talk about, the Tony Ferguson fight, he might have been able to put Tony Ferguson away with strikes, went for the submission, and it didn't work out. And the fight ends up flipping, but Bryce is about to talk about that fight now.
Yeah. So then obviously brings us to October 6th, 2018, UFC 229. I guess there was a main event that happened. Don't recall.
Yeah.
And UFC
Russian guy. Yeah.
UFC kept giving Pettis breaks and breaks that he doesn't necessarily deserve. He got a break versus Holloway, an interim title fight, and then he's getting a fight against Tony Ferguson, which could be a potential #1 contender fight, in which whoever wins that fight can potentially get a title fight later on. So they kept giving Pettis breaks that he didn't necessarily deserve, and I'll admit that.
Yeah, and then I think all of us picked Tony Ferguson, and we all thought that he was definitely the better fighter, in that although Anthony Pettis had been looking good, he just probably wasn't on Tony Ferguson level. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah.
And then the fight happens, UFC, and I mean...
What card was that? UFC?
229.
Okay.
I thought Pettis was going to lose because his gas tank is uncomparable to Ferguson. Ferguson's pressure.
Yeah,
and Ferguson.
The man is unreal.
Yeah. That says it itself.
We did all have Tony Ferguson.
Yeah. That's what I thought. And obviously the fight happens, and Anthony Pettis not only was in it, he should have won. Like Buju said, he had him hurt, and he went for the submission instead of the TKO finish. And we all thought it was a good move at the moment because of what happened just a few months ago. And obviously it didn't work out.
And you ended up losing.
He ended up breaking his hand, and it's done after 2.
If he doesn't break his hand, he goes to decision. Who wins?
Tony.
Man, a third round of Tony Ferguson, because he also hurt Pettis, I think, in the second round, right?
Yeah.
I think he rocked Pettis. Pettis then rocked him, right? Is that how it worked?
I think so. We saw both versions of Anthony Pettis in that fight, where we saw the really good, active, creative, pressuring Anthony Pettis, and we also saw the tentative backing away, getting stuck up against the cage, getting himself hurt, Anthony Pettis.
And I think the key reasoning for him getting the tentative Anthony Pettis is a gas tank. I think for a striker, he obviously want to throw a lot of strikes, punches, kicks, and whatnot. And for somebody in a lower division, he should not gas as quickly as he does. I think if he had a big gas tank, like similar to Tony Ferguson, I think he'd be a lot better fighter overall.
I think that goes for a lot of guys. If they just were in super good
That's facts. You're right.
shape, it's just hard to get to that level.
And I don't know how you just do not improve
economically.
And now moving to this upcoming fight, March 23rd, 2019, against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, we might be able to see a more free version of Pettis because there is absolutely zero threat of if Pettis goes out there, starts throwing kicks, starts being creative, that he gets taken down. Stephen Thompson is not going to take Anthony Pettis down. I think if I'm Pettis, I want to fight on the ground. But I'm just saying Pettis has the opportunity to be completely free standing up, doing whatever he wants to do because he doesn't have to worry about the threat of being taken down by Wonderboy.
I want Bryce to go back to what he was saying.
Sorry.
No, I mean, I really think that, like Bucci said, we saw the best and the worst of Anthony Pettis in that fight. And going into the Stephen Thompson fight, exactly like you said, he can do whatever he wants on the feet. He can try anything. But that isn't where he wants to fight. Like, again, Buju said. It's a matter in, I mean, Stephen Thompson isn't necessarily the easiest guy to take down. Tyron Woodley did it when he wanted to, but Tyron Woodley is a bad, bad man, especially at 170.
Also to be said that Tyron Woodley spends half of his time at Rufus Sport, though, too. So he has been working with Anthony Pettis in the lead up to this fight, I assume.
Yes. And I mean, also, though, you have to take into account a guy fighting normally at 155, coming up to 170 to take a guy down. Is not, I mean, technique is big, but also size does matter. And then I'm going to just really quickly run through Stephen Thompson since 2015. Knocks out Jake Ellenberger, spinning hook kick.
As you
knocks
should.
out Johnny Hendricks.
As you should.
Spinning back kick and punches.
As you should.
Wins a unanimous decision against Rory McDonald. And I think he just outclassed him.
Yeah.
Rory he pretty much neutralized him.
Rory was on. That was not the best version of Rory either, to be 100% fair.
Yes, 100%. But that was maybe that was just how good Stephen Thompson was to where he could just neutralize him at that point.
That's the fight everybody said, wow, Wonderboy's for real.
Yes, without a doubt. And then UFC 205, Tyron Woodley, that majority draw happens. I thought that it was, for one, an awful fight. Anyone that thought that it was like a classic and needed to be run back, obviously did because it was a draw, but
that one
wasn't super great.
That one at least had moments. The second fight didn't have any moments. So,
yeah, and that one it had moments. But nothing was good for Thompson in that fight.
No,
it was Tyron taking him down. It was Tyron exploding on him once or twice in that fight. And then the rematch happens and he loses in a very similar fight. He got taken down a couple times and he just couldn't get anything going on the feet.
And a fight,
similar
to be 100% fair on that fight, I feel like I'm saying 100% fair a lot on this episode. But I thought that fight should have been a draw or a Thompson win at the time. I think I was in the minority, but I do want to throw that out there. That I thought it was at least a draw for Thompson.
And then he beats Jorge Masvidal in a unanimous decision. I don't really remember much about it. My guess is it wasn't super great. And I also don't think I watched this Darren Till fight last May.
Very boring.
So it seems like Thompson lately has been a lot more tentative, like we saw out of Anthony Pettis. So it's hard to say how this fight's going to go. I have Anthony Pettis in this fight. I want to finally announce my pick.
I wasn't expecting that shit.
Yeah, I think that Anthony Pettis, even though he's a smaller guy coming up.
This is crazy. Anthony Pettis. This is a bad look.
Not only do we all have 3 Anthony Pettis and one's not a big Anthony Pettis guy, he's a fucking negative 350 underdog against like a 440 favorite.
Yeah.
And we all have the same fighter that's an underdog. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is. I thought for sure Bryce would have Pettis. Or Thompson.
Anthony. I thought going into this I would, but after looking at everything and really thinking things through,
that was the most we've ever broken down a fight ever.
Yeah, and man, if Anthony Pettis doesn't win this, it's a bad look. But Stephen Thompson, he's really tentative lately. Anthony Pettis hasn't been, and he doesn't have to hold anything back Saturday, whereas Thompson has to be careful about the kicks because Anthony Pettis can take you down and make you tap. So
if you had
Anthony Pettis, do it for the real one. Do it for the culture.
If you had to put $100 on it, and I'm only saying that because it matters what you say because you have money on it. If you had $100 on it, how would you bet that how the fight ends? via knockout somebody, submission somebody, via the round of it, or decision.
So you're asking what is the most likely way this fight ends?
Yes.
Sub by Pettis.
I agree.
I think that's the most likely, but I think he could also win a decision.
I think he wins a decision.
Yeah, I could see it happening.
I think it's Pettis sub or submission. I think those are the only two ways this fight ends.
Pettis
You
sub
said
or
sub or submission.
Oh. Pettis submission or a decision is the only two ways this fight ends.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
I don't think Wonderboy knocks out Pettis. And I probably just fucked all three of us by saying that.
And hopefully
knock out some wood. Find some wood, knock on it.
Hopefully Pettis doesn't get injured mid-fight.
Yeah.
That is a big thing because that's caused his last two losses.